Hello everyone, my name is Harsh and a very warm welcome to all of you in this block state management course. And in the last video, we learned how to create a simple qubit and how we can manage this counter app with a qubit. So just for a quick recap, actually I have just formatted a codes little bit, so I have just separated main.dart and this home.dart. So inside this we just created an instance of a qubit which is called as counter qubit, and we separately created a class for qubit. Okay, and there we mentioned a state, and depending upon that we were calling a emit function on increment counter function when we need to update the qubit. Okay, and to show the updates here we were actually using a block builder and we were passing a qubit instance here, and then we are showing the state. And same goes with this increment function, we are just calling that increment counter function defined in a qubit. Now we want to do the same work by creating a block. Okay, so how we can do that? So moving to actually I have already created a file named counter block, a simple file, nothing in it. I have written some comments here. For now let it be, and I have just created a class named counter block. So is this a block class? Nope, it is not. It is a simple class. So how we can create it a block class? So I have to extend this class with block. Okay, like we did with qubit. So I just need to extend it with block and it will import it, and I have to press Ctrl dot on it and create super constructor. So simply like this. And same like qubit, it is also taking an initial state named dynamic. Okay, in qubits we have mentioned the initial state to be int. In block let's try to mention it as int because we want to maintain state of a int. So if I just pass int, it will throw me an error. Okay, it is expecting the block is declared with two type parameters but one type argument were given. Okay, so it is simply saying block is expecting two parameters here but we are only providing a single one. Now what are those two parameters? One is the state and another one is an event. Now what is an event? An event can be anything. For example, when I click on this increment button, it is an event, and I can call this event as counter increment. And let's say there is another functionalities in app like adding items to the cart, so there will be an event called as add to cart event. And another things like for login we can have login event, for logout we can have logout event, and stuffs like that. So block works on the concept of events whereas qubit works on the concept of functions. So for now what we can do, so actually we need to create a class which represents that event. So for now I can just simply create a class here. Okay, so like this class, and I can call it counter increment, and simply like a class, nothing more than that. And I can pass a class here, this counter increment, and simply a comma. Okay, and simply control save. Now we have passed an event, so my event name is just the name of this class. Now let's try to create a function here. Okay, like we did in the case of qubit. So what I just need is I just want to copy this function out here, and I can just do it like this, block and simply log. And you will see there is a warning here, the member emit can only be used within block source block.dart or test. So which simply means we cannot use this increment function here. Okay, in block we can't use increment function outside the event handlers. So what are event handlers? Event handlers are ones which handles the event. So how we can create those? So to create event handlers, actually we need to extend this constructor. So I just have to do it like this, and inside this I need to create an event handler like on. Okay, so I can just write it like this, and we can mention a handler here, and you can also see a kind of a documentation regarding how we can create an event handler. So when you create a constructor with super, you can simply write on and the type of event handler you want to handle, and then we get an event and emit, and then we simply emit that state. So what I will do is, since my event is this counter increment, so simply paste it, and we can just close this one, and inside this we get two things. One is the event. Okay, so like I can call it event, and another one is the emit function, and simply like this. and inside this we can use the emit function. So I can call it like this. So whatever the code which we have written here, we can just copy it out and paste it here. So this will work. Okay, so in case of block, the difference is we need to create event, and after that we need to pass that event, and we need to create these event handlers. So for now, let's try to test it. So I will just comment this one and simply control save, and I just move to the home. And similarly, like I created a qubit, I will just create a block here. So I can just call it block for now, and this is our counter block. So simply block, and I just need to import that counter block, and here instead of qubit I can just use block, and simply I need to pass the initial state, which is 0. And if I just go down, so here to block, and here actually I can't call this function because there is no function as such. So we will think about it a bit later, and it is throwing me an error. We can't provide a counter block to counter qubit because we have mentioned a type here. So I need to change it to block, and simply inside this function we need to call that event. So how we call that event? Whenever this button is tapped, actually we need to call it like this, block dot, and we can add event to thing. So we need to add it and the type of event. So in our case it is the counter increment event, and simply control save. Now if I press on it, you will see it is incrementing, so the block is working. We can verify it here. It is calling inside block, which we have written inside this, and if I plus, and it works. So the block is working, and there are some more things that we can do to optimize this one, so we will be moving to that. Okay, so first thing, we don't want to specify this 0 because we know the initial state will always be 0. So we want it to be a predefined value. So inside this, I will remove this initial state and simply a colon, and here I can simply call super, and I just have to pass the initial state here, and it will work. So it will take the default value. And another thing, this looks a little bit of messy. For now it will not look because there are just 2 lines of code, but if this function was around 40-50 lines of code and there are 5 to 10 functions here, it will look messier. So instead of writing code here like this, we actually want to use functions. So we can use this void increment function. Okay, but how? So we just need to take this event from here, which is counter increment, and we just need to take this emit function from here. So I can just mention it like this, event comma emit, and I can use it here. Okay, so I can just remove this code and here simply like this. Okay, and I can mention it like increment counter, and we don't have to mention parenthesis here like this. Okay, it will automatically add for us. Okay, so in this case this looks bit neat, and since this function will only be used inside this class, I can make it private by adding an underscore. Okay, and actually I always like this parameter should be typed parameters rather than dynamic. So we can specify it like emitter, and we can specify this one as like our counter increment event. So simply like counter increment event, and control save. So let me restart the app, so the block will be created again, and I will press on this, and you can open the terminal and check the block is being updated. Okay, now this looks a little cleaner. Now what if we have another event called as counter decrement? Okay, so how we handle this case? Can we pass it here like counter increment? Okay, so simply like this counter decrement, but it will throw me an error because it only takes 2 parameters. So how do we handle such a condition? Do we have to create another block for another event? Nope, we don't have to. We need to create a base event, and we need to extend this event with that base event. So what I am saying is we need to actually create a base event here, and in our case I can call that base event as counter. Okay, because it is regarding the counter, and simply I need to extend this counter increment with extends keyword, and I can just write counter, and the same goes with counter decrement. So I can write extends counter. Okay, and here instead of writing counter increment and decrement, I can just write it like counter, So what we are doing is we have created a base event and we are extending these two events to follow this base event. Now here I can even similarly create a function for counter decrement like this. So when the counter decrement will be added, it will handle automatically. So just let me duplicate this function and I just rename it to decrement counter, and here instead of counter increment we should use the base event. It will be better for us. Okay, so simply counter, so it will be an event of counter, and here simply decrement counter, and inside our home let's say we want to decrement this value. Okay, so I just can do it like this. So let me just duplicate this line and let me comment one of this, and I can add here counter decrement, and let me press Ctrl save. Now if I tap on this, you will see nothing happens because I have to create this block again. So I just need to restart this particular activity, and now if I click on this, it is going minus. And now if I just go to the home screen and I just do it like this and comment this one, and it will go to positive. Okay, so we are able to handle two different events here. Now one last thing for this video, I have mentioned two types of things here, which is a sealed class and which is a final class, and it is always a good practice to use those. Okay, so how should we use that? So here actually whatever the base class we create, according to the block documentation, it is always recommended that it should be sealed. Now what is a sealed class? A sealed class can only be extended or inherited within the same file. So you cannot extend this counter class outside this file. You can only extend within this same file. Okay, and now moving to this event, we should create it as final. Final means we cannot extend this. Okay, which means there can be no extend of this class. These are the last output products, you cannot extend those, and this looks neat. Okay, so you might see this is lot more as compared to qubit. Actually we have added one more function, but in case of block we created some events, we created event handlers, and then we use those functions. So there are this much extra boilerplate code. So we will compare this in the upcoming videos, but for now this is how we use a block. This is how we use a qubit. So that's it for this video. See you in the next video. Till then, bye bye.